Cody Main, the originator, the man who owns the niche sport fort over at establishtheRun.com. What is the number one thing that people do wrong in Showdown based on your deep statistical analysis? What are people doing wrong?
Well, unfortunately, Davis, the thing that people are doing wrong now in 2025 is a lot different than the things that people were doing wrong
Yes.
in 2020 and 2021, even as recent as 2022 and 2023. Like, I feel like the field has gotten quite a bit sharper, especially with public-facing sims. Obviously, the stuff that we're doing over at Establish the Run, the sims that we rolled out this year for both Classic and Showdown, I think have helped improve the field quite a bit. And you don't see a lot of the very common mistakes that you did on in the early days, just poor roster construction, teams running out with, there's still dupe issues and stuff like that. But I think the sims, the products that people have been able to get their hands on now have made the field quite a bit sharper. That definitely played itself out in my 2024 ROI and Showdown. But I think the thing that people are still probably making the mistake most of is probably correlating lineups a little bit too much, and that's running into dupe issues, right? You have the captain wide receiver with his quarterback, opposing team's wide receiver. You're excluding the DS, just like very common roster construction stuff that you could win on in 2020 and 2021. That has become so prevalent that I think people are probably doing that type of stuff too much. And so I think like the anti-correlation stuff that is helping people be less duplicated in their lineups, the stuff where leaving salary on the table is still a little bit underutilized. I think that the meta right now is trying to use the sim products that are available with some of that type of massaging to still get onto correlated teams that aren't quite as duplicated. And you run into issues too, like where you're running, your lineups through a sim product and they sim out really well. And you're like, okay, is this lineup really going to be duped 3 times, or is it going to be more like 30?
Actually, so actually you have to know the sim. This is my number one advice. And I actually think I probably am better at Showdown than other stuff. Not a milli make. I have won the mini max like 7 times, I think,
I
since
see
I
your name
started
up
doing
there.
Showdown.
Your name is just up there all the time.
Look, man, I'm a blue collar guy. I put my shift in every day. I'm not maxing the milli maker, but I do think I am pretty good at Showdown. And my number one advice is that you actually have to know what your sim product is doing directionally, because there are like 6 inputs for ownership that you kind of have to think through, that your sim product, whether you use Run the Sims, whether you use the solver, whether you use Saber Sim, you kind of have to know what they're driving at in terms of ownership and the sense of what the field is then going to react to based on what they're seeing. Number one thing I get the sense of is this is for NFL specifically, and it's going to be different for golf. The ownership disparity between the quarterback that is favored and the quarterback that is a dog is actually wider than is projected quite a bit. So let's just the Super Bowl is just on the top of my head. So Hertz was projected to be giga owned, but actually less owned than he should have been because of the negative correlation of Hurts and Barkley. And we don't need to get too much into that specific game, but basically the favored quarterback is always owned a bit too much, and the underdog quarterback is always underowned. And frankly, it's pretty easy to understand why people don't want to do that. It's not very fun to lose. It's just not very fun to put in these lineups that don't project it well. It's not that fun to play Derek Carr. It's not that fun to play Gardner Minshew or whatever in captain. But that is just an example of where the projected ownership might make sense to have the favored quarterback. Let's call it 13% captain ownership, the dog quarterback 8%. But in reality, that's going to be more like 16 and 5.
And we talk about this a lot now, like PGA is top of mind. We talk about this a lot, both in NFL and PGA, like thinking about ownership as kind of a range of outcomes, I think is extremely important, because that's going to help you understand the combinatorial ownership that you're dealing with per lineup. And it's also going to help you kind of just understand like where the field is at in general. And if you can look at a guy and maybe his 50% ownership projection is a really strong median, but maybe that should be shaded a little bit closer to 75 than 25. It's going to kind of help you understand, okay, maybe this lineup that the solver says is going to be duped 5 times. Well, if I think his ownership should be shaded closer to the 75% end of that 50% median, probably going to be duped a few more than 5 times, right? So I think, you see that nice number and having a great R squared or RMSE or whatever metric you're using to judge your accuracy on, and ownership is great. But I think thinking through it is kind of the next level meta of like, okay, this guy is he going to come in higher owned than the ownership projection has him, or lower owned, is one of those important factors just in terms of like Showdown getting dupes right and getting combinatorial ownership right. And also not just like his individual ownership. What would his, what's his ownership going to be in these types of lineups, right? Obviously, the Eagles DST for that Super Bowl example is going to be higher owned in Captain Saquon Barkley lineups than in like a Captain Isaiah Pacheco lineup or something like that. So thinking through the combinations and understanding how those correlate together, it's just, I mean, it's so important to understand, like, you talk about like losing isn't fun, obviously, but that goes to like playing these slates at a level and in a manner that you can afford to lose quite frequently in order to get those big hits every once in a while, whether it's the mini max or the lotto or single entry type stuff. Like playing at a level where you can afford to play some uncomfortable lineups and knowing that they're going to lose pretty frequently, but pay off in a big way when they do hit is like, I mean, it's the only way I think to play Showdown. Because if you're running out these lineups that, when you win, you can barely cover your lotto entries because you've duped with 200 people, that it's just not a way to play that game.
The difference between, like, I think a great way to think of this is like, imagine you get your one win for the year, which frankly would be running above expectation probably. So like, let's say I'm going to max every flagship Showdown contest for the entirety of the regular season. So 18 regular season weeks. You have Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night, where you're going to have big money. And let's say you are doing the lotto. The difference between chopping that lotto 3 ways and chopping that lotto 30 ways is the difference between having a winning year and having a losing year, or a break-even year, roughly. So if you grant the conceit that you're unlikely to win anyways, because you probably are realistically unlikely to win anyway, when you do put yourself in a position to win, you want to put yourself in a position to chop for as few as entries as possible. And trust me, it makes my best advice I could give to you if you are playing these showdowns is frankly just don't watch, because the only times, like, the pain of realizing you have a solo first with 1 drive left and then watching Tyreek Hill get 6 more yards or whatever, and then see a 19-way chop beat you, and you're like, well, I never would have played this lineup. This lineup never would have made it into my set because it's terrible, or it grades out as really negative EV. Great advice is to not sweat Showdown. I mean, truly, it's a miserable sweat.
The number of DMs that I've gotten, whether it's on Twitter or in Discord, of like, okay, I've got a good team. When's the time to start sweating? I mean, it's honestly as close to 0-0 in the
Final
fourth
drive,
quarter.
maybe.
Yeah, final drive. Like if you've got a team that like solo or duped 5 times or whatever, and you've got kind of the pieces that you need, but then there's a few things that are happening at the bottom of the lineup that can vault you up or down. Like truly, the last 2 minutes is when you can start sweating. I had a solo win that I thought was just in the bag, and it ended up coming down to is Giants Steelers. Ended up coming down to Chris Boswell versus Malik Neighbors. Chris Boswell had 14 points, was clearly done. Giants final drive. Malik Neighbors was, I don't know, like 8.8 DraftKings points. I'm like, the team that I was like looking at that ended up winning wasn't even close. And then Malik Neighbors catches a couple balls in the final drive, finishes with 14.1 DraftKings points, lose to like a 10-way chop by 0.1. Like the swings in Showdown are insane. And Drewby's talked about this a ton in the past, like the volume that you need to have, the bankroll that you need to have in order to like comfortably max like the lotto and to be able to play that is just so massive that
Like so much more than you think to max.
So it's
lotto.
what you think it is, and then probably triple it. It's just so insane. And so like for me, even after the big win earlier this year, like clearly elevated my volume a little bit, I was still just playing around in the flea flicker, occasionally the chain mover, like the $10 buy-in lotto stuff. But yeah, I mean, and just from like a comfortability of the sweat, I don't want to like be tilting my face off at 10 o'clock at night Central Time when a guy that I don't have scores 2 touchdowns and it's just over for me. So play
You
just
can
from
evaporate.
a life EV perspective, it's just a little bit better to kind of pull it back a little bit on Showdown, I feel like.
You can, and I've seen this done. I mean, you can evaporate $250,000 in if you're maxing, you'll actually, frankly, you see this quite a lot. Someone wins a big best ball contest, someone wins the Millie Maker or whatever, and they're like, oh, like I got money to spend, I'm maxing Showdown. Like truly, go on your favorite database. RotoGrinders has one. Solver has one too, I think, of a player database, and you can see contest results. Go look, type a name of someone you saw win a contest, and then track their action for the next couple weeks, and you'll see them punt. I mean, you can see someone punt $50,000 in GBPs in 2 weeks, like pretty easily. And these
It
are
can
good
happen so
players.
fast.
These are players with wins. These are players that you would expect. Nelson is the GOAT of being a nit, where he will run these sims. If you guys don't follow him, you can follow him on Twitter, Nelson Adcock or Cut Sweats, and he'll every once in a while. He probably hasn't done it in a while. He'll post these sims and he'll show the range of outcomes for someone who's like a 10% ROI player in GPPs, which is very good, amongst the best. And he'll show these sims of them losing $1 million in a year. Just like, and that's not even a negative, that's like 25th percentile outcome or something. Like it's stunning how easy it is to just lose at in GPPs. It's just the way it is.
It's insane. I had my first 6-figure win since starting playing DFS this year, and it was in a format that I've historically been awful at. Like, I kind of get like pigeonholed into doing these 2-game slate and 3-game slate shows when they kind of override the Showdown slates, because I'm like the short slate guy at ETR. But I've long hated 2-game and 3-game slates, and I think they're like a much worse format than Showdown, at least for me specifically. But like when I'm doing content for these slates and doing shows and ownership projections and stuff like that, I kind of feel obligated to play.
Have to play.
Have to play, right? And so I played the 2-game slate, and ended up that ended up being my biggest DFS win to date, 200K in like October. And then there was just a slew of 2 and 3-game slates after that, for whatever reason. Like, just screw the NFL schedule makers for that. Right. And like, you hit a score like that, and you're like, oh my God, I'm the best. That no one is as good as me in 2-game slates. So then I'm like punting off, and to your point, like, you're like, okay, I've got an edge. I figured this out. And it really just kind of came down to like running into the right score at the right time. And yeah, you can quickly punt off a lot of those winnings, chasing what you thought was an edge. And also, like, when you're looking at your balance, you're like, what's a couple more entries in the Wildcat here and there. Right. And so, yeah, I kind of envy Nelson for being able to kind of rein that in, being a little bit more of a nit. I just decided to blast for a while.
Nelson is a giga nit. He puts he would put the chainsaw to shame, I think, with how nitty he can get. All right, let's talk a little bit about projecting ownership, because it is this thing. You get these conversations on NFL DFS shows, golf DFS shows, like, oh, he's 17%. I think he's going to be more like 22%. But if you have ever done any meaningful work projecting ownership, you realize that like it's an equation. And I haven't done projected ownership in a long time. Gonna have to dust off those skills probably for the upcoming season. But just talk a little bit about how you go about projecting ownership and the actual work that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you have to understand is like starting from a point of who or what is going to influence ownership, and like if what it was in 2016 or 2017 or whatever, when Levitan was doing each player by hand and coming up with like the 2% buckets that each player was going to land in, is a lot different than what is happening in 2024 and 2025. And like the meta has shifted so much even over the last couple of years that like we're still constantly evolving, and PGA has evolved even more of late. But like for NFL Showdown, it's understanding who or what is influencing the market, in like specifically when you're projecting ownership for like the lotto type settings, understanding that like 150 maxers make up a bigger portion of the pool potentially than other certain contests. So it starts from a basis of like who is influencing the market. Once you have an understanding or an idea of who or what might be influencing the market, then you're trying to feed that into your algorithm. And generally today's day and age, I don't think it's any secret, like projections are what is driving the market. Now it's kind of sims are driving the market, but the sims are a product of the projections. And so anyway, it kind of all just comes back to the projections. So then you're thinking about, okay, which sites or which site is potentially moving the needle more than others. So then you're trying to properly weight things. So initially you start with a point of running sites projections. Could be roto grinders, stochastic, StaberSim, ETR, run the sims. You're kind of running those through an algorithm to create generated lineups based off of what the projection you're feeding in. That kind of spits out a percentage of, okay, this, if you feed in ETR projections into an algorithm, it's going to say that Jalen Hurts is going to be used in Jalen Hurts is going to be used at captain in 19% of lineups, right? And that gets you a good baseline. And then from there, what I do and where I think I add value, and our ownership projections for NFL Showdown, I think we're still really good this year, even with kind of the leveling wars that are going on with the sim stuff. Then you're kind of like, okay, here's what the computers say the field is going to do. Like, what is the field actually going to do when they go into click in lineups? And that's kind of the human element behind it. And so having like that database of all the ownership projections and ownership results from 2020 till now, you can look back and like, okay, Jalen Hurts as a favorite, as a 7.5 point home favorite against a bottom whatever defense is going to actually be a little bit probably higher owned than the computers say that he's going to be. So then you might bump that up manually, but you start with an kind of an algorithmic baseline. Here's what the computers say based off of the projections that you're feeding it. Say each player is going to be owned in any given lineup, and then for me, the part that I think that comes after that you can massage these numbers a little bit is kind of manually tweaking that based off of the matchup or based off of kind of the free or premium content that you're hearing, market sentiment, injuries, all those little factors kind of go in to manually adjust those numbers to try and get them closer to what you think like a perfect median would be. And then again, you're still kind of using that to understand like, there's still a range of outcomes here. We're trying to get as close to the best median as possible, but it's either going to be higher or lower than that number. To what degree, I guess, is the important aspect. And then the final thing that's kind of changed this year with us having sims available is you notice that the numbers tend to go towards where the sims say they should be. So, right, if you have Saquon Barkley as 15% projected ownership, but the sims say his optimal rate's 20%, you kind of have a pretty good idea in your mind that 15% is going to end up coming closer to 20%. So we'll kind of massage those numbers a little bit based off of where our sim outputs kind of put us. But it's a computer driven process to get you a baseline. And then I think the ones that do ownership really good are able to massage those numbers a little bit, just kind of either based off of whatever factors are happening in that game or just some kind of, human element behind it. But I think like that final manual tweak on those as we approach lock is what really dials them in.
So how do you go about doing it for a sport without correlations and that has less content and that is even more projection driven, like golf or MMA? Because it's so interesting. Most people's opinions for golf DFS, which does have huge prize pools, I feel like it gets a little golf is like probably, this is a good question. Do more unique users enter the flagship PGA tournament on Thursday or enter one flagship NBA DFS tournament on DraftKings, like
That's a
per
great
week?
question.
I would guess golf.
I've long thought that golf is the second biggest DFS sport, and like I don't have a good comparison because I don't play NBA nightly. But being kind of around the PGA streets, like once April rolls around, I mean, even this week with the players, like once we get into championship season and it's like Masters and PGA Championship and the Open and stuff like that, I do the prize pools get massive. There's two milli makers this week. There's a 444 milli maker. A $25 buy-in milli maker. So I think PGA is massive. And that kind of leads into your next point, which I'll let you get back to on the ownership stuff. But PGA ownership is a freaking bear. Like it's so tough because you don't have the correlation aspect of it. And I think PGA content is such that there's so many different people providing both free and premium PGA content, projections and stuff that it's tough to know on any given week, like who's going to influence ownership more than somebody else. So PGA ownership, I love it. I love the challenge of it. I love trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, but it's a nightmare on some weeks.
You have to have a good sense of, the biggest content outlets. Who are they going to be pushing? Who maybe doesn't show up? you have, frankly, a huge chunk of what is going to drive ownership is what data golf projects. Like everyone in PGA DFS either has access to data golf projections, checks their stuff against data golf or whatever. Now, data golf does ownership, but I think that they would say it's not their biggest sweat.
Mhm.
Like they do it, but they're golf guys, they're not like DFS guys first at all. So it's like that's useful, but how useful is it really? Like there are I don't even know what their RSQ is. I would guess that most of the DF like I would guess yours is better. I would guess like the SaberSim product is probably better at it. But golf ownership becomes a huge leveling game because there are going to be some guys that show up like a given week. You're going to be like, wait, Byung-Hun An is 19% owned. I had him projected for 5. Who was projecting him that well, or who was giving him out as a lead pipe block? And then if a $8,200 golfer is 19% owned and you had him as 5% owned, then everyone else in that salary range
Yep.
is going to be wrong. So it becomes a huge mess to project.
I mean, that happened. That exact thing happened this week. We had, Harris English, I think like 4.5%. Is Harris English was 6,600, right? You have Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy at the top. So you kind of need that salary relief. You kind of get the sense that like some of these cheap guys were going to get steamed up a little bit last week at API. And you run into this situation where like we had Harris English at 4.5%. I think we had him at like 6.5% in small field, kind of like understanding, okay, there's going to be a little bit of steam there, right? In the $200 driver, which is kind of what I use as like a proxy for small field single entry ownership, $200 driver, 1,100 buy-in, 1,100 entries. He came in at like 24.5%. You're like where does that come from? And so the thing with golf, I think, is there was a point, and this was like even as recent as a year ago, when Rufus was involved, that established the run. I think Rufus, being one of the most respected golf bettors in the world, led to a lot of people just blindly or otherwise trusting the ETR projections, and so you didn't have like this aggregating that I think is happening a little bit more now that we've moved projections in house, and hopefully we can earn the trust and let people know that like the modeling that we've done on the back end is worth trusting the established run PGA projections as much as you would Rufus's projections. But now you have this situation where I think there's more aggregating. There's been a little bit more churn. And now, like as we've started this PGA season this year, like even more so than ever, I think free content and like, weekly based take, like course history is important this week. So I'm going to boost the guys that have a little bit better course history. Like
Right.
all of those types of like kind of soft skill factors, I think, have influenced ownership more this year. And it's made it really tough. And I mean, quite frankly, we've had some massive ownership misses that for me, who's been doing it for 2.5 years plus, has like been very surprising to see some of these come in. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of adjust as that happens. But when the stuff that is influencing ownership projections are like less quantifiable, like what if if it's like, okay, well, data golf is influencing the ownership projections the most, then you can like, okay, I'm gonna increase the weight that we have in our algorithm for data golf projections. Like to me, it seems like it's more of these kind of you just can't quantify exactly what's influencing stuff. It's free content. Shows like Mayo, who
I was gonna say whatever fucking slapdick that Mayo and Feinberg are on a Tuesday, or I guess their big show comes out on Sunday, then they do another one on Tuesdays. But if there's some $7,800 guy that Mayo is like, doing his Ric Flair woo, he's like, this is my guy, I'm locking him in my 10 lineups, and he might project well, he might not. And they have the Fantasy National stuff that they use to generate their projections and their stats. So, but whatever it is, if there's a guy who projects okay, but Mayo is all over him, that guy is 10% more owned than he would show up in just like a raw data perspective as he should be.
And that's so easy to do for golf because, like you said, there's no correlation. It's just pick your 6 favorite guys that fit underneath the 50K salary cap. So if Mayo likes a guy, it doesn't matter if he fits into whatever lineup that you were going to build anyway, because you don't have to worry about the correlation aspect of it like you do in NFL. So yeah, it's just pick your 6 favorite guys. And if you watch the free Mayo show and then you watch the Ship It show and then you watch RPS and then you watch ET, you might just pick up a little bit of something from everybody. But yeah, the free and like there's a lot of good golf content out there, a lot of entertaining golf content out there. And and some of it could be geared more towards outrights or top 10 or top 20 markets and stuff like that. But that's the thing about, PGA DFS. You just pick up one of those nuggets, and then that kind of influences your lineup. And I do still think there's a pretty good amount of casual money in the golf streets for sure, especially in the lotto type stuff, and especially for weeks like this, like the players. It's easy just to pop open DraftKings on your app while you're taking a dump and click in 6 guys you like, and you get to sweat it for 4 days, hopefully. And I think for a lot of people of our age and older, I think that's kind of an appealing little sweat.
Yeah, I mean, most weeks I don't take golf super seriously. Like I've just, I like a good sweat. I like round 4 Showdown is like the nuts with the placement points and everything. It gives you it's fun to have a team to sweat on Sundays. I mean, I do play an entry every single week and every single day for achievement grinding, although DraftKings has nuked that basically from orbit. One of the most disappointing things when they first started doing season-long achievements, it was possible to get black status on DraftKings if you just grinded the achievements. I think this would have been like 2018-ish, I think was the first year, maybe 2019. Truly one of the gravest disappointments of my life that they removed that, because it was the most I was ever locked in, dude. I'm up grinding, League of Legends slates at 11 o'clock p.m. Central Time.
And that's what they should want. They're trying to create addicts,
Yeah.
right? Like get you into your black status. Maybe you game the system a little bit, but get you into the club, and then see how much rake we can siphon off of Davis. I hate that they nerfed those. It's so bad.
I mean, it's truly changed the way I interact with the platform. I used to be like, I was on DraftKings all day. I would make sure to get my mission in. If my mission was $100 for a day, I'd be like, well, I guess I'm playing whatever the 109 single entry baseball contest is today, because I got to get, there's no chance now, because it's just not worth it. So if my mission for a day, if like my action for the last week scales my mission up and it's $100, like I'm not doing that.
Yep.
I'm not going to play $100 single entry contest just to fulfill my mission for some sport that I don't have an edge at. So, and they don't, I mean, obviously they don't care. Like, I guess that's the funny thing about this whole conversation. We haven't even started talking about betting and grinding those edges yet. We're about to get there, but that is the direction that all these companies are heading in, is they want us betting. They want us on the sportsbook side or the casino side. They don't, the investment in daily fantasy, the place that's doing the most in innovation in daily fantasy now is Underdog, with all of their, they're doing the college March Madness basketball tournaments and this stuff, and the contests aren't huge, but at least it's something new. And they have the gladiator rake back and stuff, which is pretty generous. Like if you really grind on Underdog, you can get 50% rake back, which is like never in a million years are you getting that from FanDuel and DraftKings for the sportsbook side.
It's actually my favorite way to play PGA Showdown is on Underdog. The 50% rate back is sick. You can just auto a bunch of those drafts because you don't have to worry about the correlation aspect. Just fire me in 6 golfers, and then you wake up to the email on Tuesday that you got 50% rake back, and fields are pretty soft. Prize pools are good. Like, and to your point, like just offering a product for a certain niche group of people, and clearly, like, I love that. But like having the college basketball March Madness thing, regardless of how big it is, it's them taking a shot. They did the same thing with PGA. Like I thought there was a chance some of those PGA basketball contests weren't going to fill. They ended up filling. So shout out to them. They came back with some other contests later on, for this year. But I think just like taking those shots, which like frankly for them, the size that they are pretty low risk, but being willing to put
what does it matter if a 200K contest overlays? Like it sucks. Right. Like obviously they would prefer to not have overlay on those contests, but it's table stakes for a company that has grown as fast as they have. And it's just a bummer because it's good. That's good customer acquisition. That is the customer acquisition I want to see. Like, yeah, I'm more likely to play some golf pick'ems. I'm more likely to head on over to the champions tab if I'm on your app checking my sweats anyways. And it's like, it's good for me for Underdog to get bigger and grow. So like, I'm not complaining, but it's just what it does show is it shows that just having a little bit of vision, a little bit of creativity can go a long way towards, engendering, like Underdog has got to have the most loyal customers of any of these daily fantasy apps at all. Like, do you know anyone who like, it's like, fuck yeah, DraftKings, dude, the best. they treat me so good. It's like, no, because they just want you to fire in, Lakers money line bets or whatever.
That's exactly right. Now, the only thing I need to get on Underdog about, maybe you can help me out here. We only have like what, I don't know, 16 days until the UFL season. But if we could get some like UFL battle royales on Underdog, even if it's just like $5 buy-in, 1K to first, couple thousand entries, that would
I mean, I'll ask.
suit me well. That would suit
I
me well.
will. I will send Mr. Shane Newman. No promises, but I will ask.
The only reason I even bring it up is because Underdog, technically has the exclusive fantasy partnership with the UFL. It would be sick to see them use that. And look, all I'm doing is angling for more ways to get money down on my favorite sport. But yeah, I think it would be, kind of along the same lines of them offering college basketball and NHL stuff. Like, get it, the few spring football followers that are out there still grinding the UFL, throw them a bone once in a while.
Hey man, I love spring football. Of course we gotta talk about the UFL. I've been to I think 4 games for
Hell
the St.
yeah.
Louis Battlehawks. Kaka. I was actually at the final game that was ever played in the XFL here in St. Louis. It was I guess it would have been like March 2nd or something, right before COVID shut everything down. And they actually, I remember this. They had the prize pools up, and they were like, oh, maybe we'll play 2 of the games because we're out in Seattle and no one's tested positive yet. Maybe we'll try and play. Yeah, spring football is awesome. And now that there's only because was it 2 years ago they did the 2 leagues? It was the
Yep.
USFL and the XFL. That was a nightmare because the prize pools were chopped up between the 2, and the players were also chopped up in between the 2, which means however low tier you thought spring football could be, it got worse than that because the best players who are not in the NFL were split in between 16 teams. That was not great.
It was bad. And like the thing I think from my perspective, whether you're just a fan who wants to watch or more importantly, you're someone that wants to bet on the game, you can't ask for people's attention span for like 14 weeks, or 16 weeks, 18 weeks, like right after the NFL season wraps up. I think you need to let it breathe a little bit. People need to kind of miss football for a month or two and then go into it. And, for the UFL now, it's a 10-week regular season, 2-week playoff, and then it's done. 12 weeks, 3 months, and it's all over before, NFL season. I mean, NFL is now 365 days a year, but now it's like all over before you really get into the NFL stuff. And so I think you can be like, okay, fans, sports bettors, DFS players, give us your attention span for, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it may be. And then you can kind of move on with the rest of your life. But like, yeah, when you had the UFL and the USFL and the XFL together playing at the same time, and like, not just at the same time, but also overlapping. It's like, dude, you just cannot ask people to care about 2 separate spring football leagues where the play is already a little bit worse. And now it's even worse with you guys competing for players. So I think the UFL is good, not to get too far off onto this tangent, but I think that, hopefully there's like some commitment at some point from the UFL to like really embrace sports bettors and yeah, I mean, it's the only way they're going to grow, I think. And
it would be huge if they did like detailed injury reports and they were like, all right, guys, like this guy's not playing, this guy is playing. And it's not as if it's like some crazy step to have leagues embrace sports betting. Like the NBA and the NFL are like huge partners.
Yeah, massive.
Like it's so, and that is a clear audience. I mean, I think that is like kind of why golf has grown so much. Is golf is such a perfect sport for sports betting. It's pretty casual. When you win, like you win 100 to 1 outright, it's amazing. That's what everyone wants. So just making yourself more palatable to sports betting is such an easy path for this league for the UFL. Like, I mean, obviously it's never going to be that big, but it could be bigger than it is. If you're just like, I just want to market to the most degenerate sickos who want to remember John Reese Plumlee because they watched him play in college, like that is a sizable audience, but it's not the biggest audience that you could get.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to see like the TV numbers that they'll pull, and even like the social media numbers and stuff like that, which aren't bad. Like, but for them to get like 1 million views, per game, it's like, okay, how are, 1.2 million people tuning in for this, but I can't fill a 10K to first prize pool on DraftKings? What sick bastards are watching this game that like they'll sit down for 3 hours and watch Adrian Martinez and the Birmingham Stallions, but they won't put $20 on the
God,
game? Like,
that was peak, dude.
come
Or
on.
Adrian
Oh,
Martinez was peak daily fantasy. I
yeah, shout
really
out
enjoyed
Nebraska.
that. Yeah, shout out to Kansas State
That's
University
true.
as well. A little bit overlap for us there. So actually let's talk a little bit about UFL and prop wagering, because you've had the unique experience of basically being an originator and having sports books copy your shit. What is that like, trying to effectively set the line?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting. It would be different if it was a bigger market, like right what Dink is kind of doing with NBA and what the NFL team is doing with NFL. It would be might feel a little bit different if it was a bigger market. I understand why the markets are so illiquid and why they move so quickly and why they might wait to see establish the run numbers before like a site like Prize Picks or Underdog would maybe set their lines or release some stuff. But I mean, frankly, it's just like the confidence in knowing the work that we've put in throughout the week in order to come up with these numbers are going to be good. So whenever we see something pop up on, last year it was ESPN Bet or Prize Picks or Underdog or wherever you could find ways to get action down, like we have a level of confidence in the work that we've put in that like we're going to consistently win on UFL, just like the NFL team does in NFL, just like the NBA team does in NBA. And to that point, like we're charting games. Like before we hopped on, I was charting week 6 Birmingham Stallions versus Houston
Jesus
Gamblers.
Christ, man.
Like a lot of this stuff isn't publicly. So funny point about that is
Is
when
your wife proud of you, Cody?
she's like, what do you even do during the day? She thinks I tweet, which is true, not effectively. She thinks I tweet and I watch football. Also, at this point in my life is very true. But like I in the NFL, that you have all the data feeds and the APIs and everything's publicly available. And by like the time Friday evening rolls around, everything's been rehashed a billion ways. What I love about UFL and preseason and all like this, the niche sports that I cover is like that like hasn't been the case. So all of your thoughts are original, all of your projections are original. All of your even to the point like where your data is for the most part original. And thank God we have PFF like now. Like PFF has the basic charting, routes run and targets and were they in the slot or out wide or whatever. But like I think that there's some degree of just diving in a little bit deeper and getting a little bit more of an intimate understanding with each player and each offense specifically for UFL that like has been super valuable. And dating back to XFL 2020, we, whenever props or pick'ems or whatever are available, we've consistently won on those. And I think part of it's just because it's the books or sites don't have the bandwidth to keep up with that type of stuff. And there isn't enough publicly available data to like provide really efficient lines for those types of sports. So I think by being maybe extra prepared, maybe too prepared for this type of stuff is you can set really good lines. And if something seems off when it's released, like you can attack immediately. The one thing that's like really unfortunate about UFL is we don't have the same luxury as NFL and NBA. Like we cannot wait for stuff to have sat around on ESPN Bet for 4 hours or on Prize Picks for 4 hours. Like you
Right.
almost have to kind of hit those like when they open, and like not to try to like inflate a record, but because the market's so illiquid and all of those things, like you can't just kind of sit around. You kind of have to pounce when the iron's hot a little bit. So from that perspective, originating to some degree has been really interesting. It's just like having fun and having confidence, I think, in where we are from a player projection standpoint has allowed us to get to that point. My hope now is that like, okay, we've had a really successful UFL season, at least, by all metrics in terms of viewership, and the league went off without a hitch and everything. Maybe there will be a few people, a few books, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel or Caesars or somebody that'll come on board and offer a little bit of a more robust props menu for 2025.
I mean, our boys at Underdog do keep adding stuff that I don't expect. Like they had a pretty robust combine menu,
Yeah.
which was nice to see. I mean, they're, it's so funny. Sometimes I'll just scroll the tab on Underdog and be like, there's like surfing in here, there's like motocross. So I'm like, all right. I mean, look, if you build it, they will come. So there you go. You will have access. Do you work with my good friends Alex and Sean on the UFL?
Alex and Sean, I think, have had inputs, but they weren't super involved on the UFL stuff. Like I'll pull Alex or Sean for a show if needed because I know those guys are at least sometimes grinding. I know Alex is in there quite a bit. But Alex and Sean have been super helpful on the preseason stuff, and I think like that's definitely their wheelhouse too. So they're not super involved on the UFL stuff. I would love to have them be more involved on the UFL stuff, but they've got to like, dude, those guys need like 6 months recovery from the hell that they go through in the college football season. So I try not to bother them too much with the UFL stuff. But as soon as August rolls around, then like I'm nudging Sean in Slack, like, all right, dude, it's time to get back in the preseason streets.
Yeah, I've known those guys for a long time. Very fun to sweat with Sean. And what I mean is he's actually the worst person on earth to sweat daily fantasy sports contests with of all time. All right, last thing that I want to talk to you about, Mr. Main, is I want to talk to you about lifting weights. I want to talk to you about getting big. What? Because I actually don't know. I know you're a Ninja Creamy guy. I know you're a Sam Sulek guy. But what is your origin story of trying to get jacked?
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I've talked about this a lot. Maybe I talked about it with Overzet on his DFS After Dark, but and so a lot of people probably don't know. But I originally went to school at Nebraska for exercise health science.
Exercise science.
That was the original goal, and I think like as you know, an active 17, 18-year-old kid who was involved in sports and whatnot growing up, and like looking for the path forward. I was like, you know what? I could be the next strength and conditioning coach at Alabama. And so like when I went to school, my like ultimate life goal was my career oriented goal was to be the next strength and conditioning coach at Nebraska. Like that, I was gonna graduate. I was gonna get massive.
Pretty good goal.
Do the nutrition and exercise stuff, and then eventually, I was going to be the next strength and conditioning coach. And turns out that after talking to some career oriented people at the university, like that probably wasn't a super likely path. And more likely, I would probably be like a dietitian in a hospital or a nursing home or something like that. And being a 17, 18-year-old kid still was like, that dude, no, like that's not for me. Don't tell me that. So I got through like 2 years of school in that undergrad program. I was like, no, that's not for me. So I switched to business, but continued to kind of grind while I was going to school. Spent a ton of time in the dining hall, trying to get big. Spent a ton of time in the rec center trying to get big. And I think the thing that stuck out to me during those years, that was like 2011, 2012, 2013. When bodybuilding.com was still massive, when you could go in the
Oh,
bodybuilding.com forums.
what day?
And
What day of the week does the week start, and how many days in a week are there, Cody?
one
People
of the
are
best all-time
asking.
forums. That place was a cesspool, but what I learned from that place and some of the articles on the site was like just applying stuff that to your own training and whatnot is so much more valuable. Like living it basically is so much more. There's so much more value to be gained than like sitting in a classroom or whatever. So decided that the strength and conditioning stuff wasn't for me, but I was still going to continue to like pursue it personally. And I think I learned more just like being in the trenches day in and day out and going from a 135-pound kid at 17 to like 200 to then shred it, cut down to 175. And then that kind of like living that lifestyle day in and day out, learned so much from that. And, by like 21, 22, I was no Sam Sulek, but I was a pretty big dude at that point, just kind of grinding for a couple of years in the gym on my own, teaching myself nutrition, teaching myself how to work out, teaching myself proper recovery. And then, life happens, Davis, and you get a job
Sure
and
does.
you find a girl and you have a couple of kids with said girl. And suddenly, being this jacked 20, early mid 20 something year old dude isn't so important to you. And so I like completely stopped going to the gym, like from, 24 till like 29, 30, 32 now. In the last couple of years, like, just you eventually, I think every guy kind of gets to a point where like, man, I'm really just like going to keep going down this path towards, looking worse and worse each day and each month and each year. And so I kind of looked at myself, I'm like, damn, like what happened over the last, 6 to 8 years, and decided to make a change. And
But
so over the
the
last
answer for most people is, by the way, fuck it. It's
buck,
too late.
right.
It's too late. Fuck it.
Yeah, right. And I kind of felt that. I'm like, my testosterone levels certainly aren't as high. My energy levels probably aren't as high right now at 30, when I decided to kind of like recommit to going down this path. But I was like, I got to do this. I don't want to be 40 and like have a beer belly and like hate the way that I look in a shirt or at the beach or hanging out with my kids or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, it's time to like recommit to this and like just do this. And so that was like 2 years ago. Decided to get back into it. Had to kind of relearn everything that I had forgotten from my late teens, early 20s, but like it came back quick. And like, you mentioned Sam Sulek. Like, it's funny that I was able to draw inspiration from a kid that at the time was like 21,
20.
but dude is just a grinder, and it's not sexy. It's not always going to be fun. Your meals aren't always going to be pretty. Sometimes they're going to look like dog food. And like walking on the treadmill every day isn't fun, or riding the stationary bike isn't going to be fun. But like, I think that like just seeing him do it every day without fail, like was kind of a little bit of a motivating factor to me, and seeing the results. And then like personally, once you have a little bit of like success doing that, or a little bit of like personal results, it's just like this butterfly effect, man. It's like this flywheel effect where you'll just keep going, and it just becomes a day-to-day routine. So 2 years in, not to like get too into the weeds on this, but I was like 207, super fluffy, 207 pounds. The first day I decided to weigh myself when I was going to do it, shredded down a little bit, bulked up, shredded down, bulked up, shredded down. I'm at 173.8 this morning, about 5'10", 5'11", and fairly lean, I think. And so like the goal is just to keep doing this until, there's like no end goal. There's no like, I want to step on a bodybuilding stage, or, whatever. Like the end goal is like to just continue to feel happy with the way that I look, and continue to be happy with the process of going to the gym and eating properly, and maybe along the way, help a few people out. But it's just like, it's just once it becomes part of your day to day, once it becomes kind of part of your lifestyle, it's just like one of those things that Sam says this all the time, like one of those things you get to do, not one of those things you have to do. And so now I look forward to cardio, look forward to the gym, look forward to meal prepping. And like, I think if I took that away from myself at this point, like I would go on a spiral. So now it's just part of life.
That's my my biggest advice to people, is to find a way to make whatever your fitness thing is part of your routine. It's actually kind of fun. I certainly am not jacked. I'm like, right now, I'm probably like 20 pounds over my fighting weight. I do a great job getting to the gym. I'm really strong. I can bench. I'm very strong for my size. I can bench 225,
Okay.
which is it's a big. I'm a little guy. But
That's money. Once you hit 225, dude, that's a gym milestone that you'll never forget.
You'll never forget. So I don't mean to proselytize to people. I think sometimes it comes off that way. Like, look, man, I am not going to say no to a cookie.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm very locked in. I'm being very serious. So we'll see how long it lasts. But I actually forget where I got this, but I got this great. It's just a really good example of how motivation works, because motivation basically doesn't work. But it's a lot of the times people will make, a resolution or a declaration like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. And that sounds great. That's a great goal. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times. But then it becomes, well, I'm not going to go today. Like, today was a shitty day at work. I'm not going to go today. Well, I'm not going to go today because I didn't sleep. I got bad sleep. So I'm like, not going to go today. That sucks. And I got that thing on Wednesday with your mother, with my mother-in-law. So I'm not going to go. And then I got this work thing. Well, I'll go on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then you don't go on Friday. So you're like, well, I'm not going to go. So now I'm just not going to go at all. Right. Because then I'm not going to get my goal. So maybe arbitrary goals work for some people. They never worked for me. Like basically, you just cannot leave yourself an option. And it's again, coming from someone who doesn't have kids, who does fantasy football YouTube for a living. I'm not meaning to lecture anyone about discipline, but from people who actually have needed discipline in their lives, that is something that I've taken away from, Goggins and Sam and Chris Bumstead and all these people with all these great accomplishments. The line flowing through all those people's story is that to not rely on motivation and to just basically have it be non-negotiable. And actually, this is actually true, Cody. I have gotten emails from listeners to this show of being like, I listened to your show with X, Y, and Z. You were talking about Huberman. You were talking about X, Y, and Z. And I decided to get up and get off my ass. There's actually a guy in the Discord who went from his name is, I don't know if he wants me to dox him, but his name is Will. He's in the Discord. He went from 275 to 180-ish, 170-ish. And yesterday he just ran a half marathon.
That's so sick.
And I'm not saying he did it because of me or anything like that, but it's just like people do actually do this stuff all the time. And it's possible for you. It's possible for anyone. You just kind of have to make the decision to do it.
I clearly we're in the fantasy space and that's kind of our thing and that's our niche wherever we decide to take that. But having, shared some of the stuff, like just even whether it's just a creamy recipe in passing, or a joke about, hitting a protein goal or, a lift or something like that. Like the amount of DMs or replies to those tweets that I get of people asking for some small amount of advice or some big amount of advice like that's to me is still pretty cool. And so I really appreciate that from anybody that's ever asked for those types of questions or I've ever given a response to. Like, the thing about DFS is it is kind of this zero sum game where me being good has a direct impact on you, and you being good has a direct impact on me. My level of fitness or whatever, my muscularity has no impact on yours. And so it is truly one of those, the word community gets thrown out a lot, but it is truly one of those communities where helping people out is a big aspect of it. And it can be going from 275 to 180 can be a super lonely journey sometimes. So having other people to talk about it with or go through it with, or, watch as they're going through their journey is super helpful, dude. There were times when I was trying to bulk up and it's midnight and I'm trying to get a final meal in so I can get, I'm naturally just a smaller dude and I don't want to eat, don't have the appetite to be in a calorie surplus. It'd be times it's midnight and I'm trying to shovel down another 500 calories and I'll just pull up a Sam Sulek video and that gets me through that meal. And that type of stuff I think is pretty cool about the fitness community where you can just kind of go through it with, with somebody else, even if it's just you watching them on YouTube.
It's really funny you say that because I have this, and this will give listeners a sense of how truly mentally ill I am. But one of the things that has worked for me to not eat garbage is, I'm an iPad kid. I sit there and watch my little YouTube videos on my phone while I eat. And I'm not going to eat an unserious, fatty whatever and watch a C-Bum video or a Sam Sulek video. So if I want to sit and have my Diet Coke and relax at my lunch, I better have some chicken and sweet potato or whatever to watch my video. So I'm I'm eating, this is a good, high protein, clean, whole ingredient meal. I get to watch my iPad kid video and I don't get to watch it if I'm eating garbage. And that is legitimately one of the things, I'm sitting there at the refrigerator, I have this meal prep chicken and I, whatever else is in the house. And I'm well, you better decide between these two things because you're going to actively be disappointed with yourself if you make the wrong choice.
I feel for us DFS people, anything you can gamify is probably going to end up being a net positive for you. So for you, if it's okay, I'm going to reward myself with my little iPad time. Daddy gets 30 minutes on the iPad if I eat my chicken and sweet potatoes.
Yes,
I've been the same way. I got one of these in no product recommendations here, but I got one of those body fat scales. And the one thing that helped me with I think the one thing that helped me most with this most recent cut where I've dropped 28 pounds or whatever, was getting pissed off because these scales are not accurate. They're very inaccurate in fact. And like if you went to get a DEXA scan, it's going to be very different than like what type of reading you're seeing on these scales. But one thing that helped me was getting pissed off at this scale when it's like, oh yeah, you're still 19.6% body fat despite you losing 12 pounds. And so like then it became this battle between me and this scale of like, fuck yeah, I'm not that heavy. I don't have that much body fat. And so then it's just like this, like, you know, kind of gamified it with myself a little bit of like, all right, I got to beat this 19.6% body fat number or whatever the scale is telling me. So then you grind a little bit harder or whatever, but anything you can do to like, just make it more of a game as opposed to like this grind that you have to go through, I think can make it a little bit easier on yourself.
I mean, the motivation, the thing that at the end of the day works the best for me is like, there's a lot of stuff that I still want to do with my life. Like Peter Attia talks a lot about this stuff. Like his book Outlive is pretty good on this of like, there's no reason your life has to end when you're 40 or 45 or 60 or whatever. Like I want to be skateboarding when I'm 50. I want to be golfing when I'm 80. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm weak and eating poorly and not taking care of myself and not getting sunlight. Like I want to be walking my dog when I'm 80. Like why, like I don't want my life experience to be cut short because I was lazy when I was 32 years old. That is obviously magnified and amplified when you have children, I think.
And there's nothing you're going to do to improve longevity. You can watch all the Brian Johnson stuff or biohacking or all that stuff. But I think there's nothing you're going to do more to improve longevity and like actual quality of that longevity than body recomposition, which, for all intents and purposes is just reducing your body fat and increasing your lean muscle mass. That's going to be like your best bet at being able to do those things when you're 40, 50, 60 is improving that now while you still can in your late 20s or early 30s. And so I think that was like a big thing for me. I've got 3 kids now. I'd love to be able to play, baseball and soccer and football and all that stuff with my son and volleyball or softball with my daughter and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, that is super important on top of all of the other internal motivating factors. That's probably like the one external motivating factor. And I think that can be the one thing where it's like, okay, yeah, I gotta get healthy for my kids is pretty important. But like I think, like you said, everything like has to be internal, and it has to be, if you're going to go down that path, it has to be discipline over motivation. Like it just has to become a part of your day to day.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I've gone far down the road of hacks and reading all the self-help books. And don't get me wrong, like I love that shit. Like I'm gonna read Huberman's book comes out in September, I think, and like I already know every word that's gonna be in it and everything that he's gonna say, but I'm still gonna buy it and still gonna read it. But end of the day, man, you gotta drink a lot of water. You got to lift weights until past mild discomfort. You got to get sunlight in your eyes and get your heart rate above 130 beats per minute. And that's really about as simple as it gets. And if you do that, you're going to feel better. You're going to be happier. You're going to like your family more. You're going to like your job more. And you're going to find that inside yourself. That's been the biggest thing for me is you kind of like yourself more actually when you are taking care of your body and your brain.
It's almost like stupid how simple it is, really. And I think there's a lot of great content. I mean, I just got done talking about Sulek, but like Huberman and Goggins and all these guys that offer one shred of advice that you can latch onto. But for as much good information as out there, I think there's as much stuff out there that can confuse people, and maybe not intentionally, but maybe it just takes the meta a little bit too deep.
Well, if you are worried about optimizing the 1% when you're not doing the 99%,
right. Yes.
if you're not lifting heavy, really, if you're not lifting weights and you're not getting good sleep, even if you are lifting weights and you're not getting good sleep, there's just nothing really that can be done. Sleep is like the most important part of it.
It's that simple, lift to failure or as close to failure as you feel comfortable with. do daily cardio. Like you said, 130 beats per minute is great. Like you need, like, here's the thing. You can achieve that 130 beats per minute for 30 minutes by walking on the treadmill at a slight incline. It
Slight
doesn't need to be
incline.
you going for sprints or like putting on a weighted vest and doing uphills and stuff like that. Like it could be extremely simple. 30 minutes around 130 beats per minute for your heart rate, get that thing elevated, get your cardiovascular system up, hydrate plenty, get plenty of sleep, and then like eat for your goals. I think that's like the for a lot of people that I see in my home gym that aren't making changes, but they're showing up every day. They're working out hard. They're probably not eating for whatever goal that they're trying to achieve. If you're trying to lose body fat, you have to be in a caloric deficit. There's no amount of like metabolism hacking or biohacking that you can do
Yep.
to lose weight if you aren't in a caloric deficit. And if you're trying to build muscle like me, I was a tiny dude. I wanted to build muscle. You have to eat in a surplus. And if you're like, dude, I'm shoveling down food like crazy, I'm not gaining weight. I promise you, you're probably not shoveling down food like crazy. Like track your calories, track your macros for a day or for a week, and see if you're actually above, what your maintenance calorie goal would be. But dude, it's that simple. Like that's like the gist of, and that's like what Sulek is doing. That's the gist of fitness
It's the whole
content
thing.
creation at this point. That's a whole game. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that you can do within that to optimize. But like once you start getting in the gym, you'll figure out like, okay, this tricep extension doesn't really feel that good. I'm feeling it more in my rear delts or whatever. I'm going to actually go to this easy bar push down instead. And like, oh, okay, yeah, that feels better. Like as you're in the gym, figuring things out, messing around, playing with different groups of muscles and stuff, you're going to figure out which exercises feel better for you and which ones are optimized for your body and your muscle insertions and all that stuff. Like that is like so next level that you kind of just
So
have,
beyond.
you just have to get started. And like for the first, I don't know, like, even after having spent a bunch of my late teens, early 20s in the gym and then kind of coming out of it, getting back into it, I had to relearn that stuff on my own too. And I didn't know which particular exercises were best for me or which rep ranges or how many sets or whatever until you actually do it, until you actually kind of figure out like, okay, yeah, this one feels good. I really feel this contraction here. I feel sore the next day. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing some muscle growth like that. Like you have to be in the trenches to figure that stuff out. But as far as like getting started, it's as simple as that, man. It's so easy to do it, and it's not sexy, but yeah, I think if people just commit to it for 6 months to a year, they'll completely change the way they look and feel.
Nothing else will change your life more. Maybe winning the Millie Maker. Maybe if
Yeah.
you win Best Ball Mania 6, it would change your life a little bit more. Everyone, we're gonna get out of here. EstablishTheRun.com, PGA ownership, PGA Sims, NFL DFS Sims, NFL DFS GPP articles, and the originator of UFL DFS prop lines and all of that amazing content. Cmain7 on twitter.com. Check him out over at ETR, and I'll be back with all of you guys next week.